They were already standing inside an unmarked minefield. So what happened next? Did they make it out alive? First, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now let's get into it. The first rays of dawn painted the rugged mountains of the Afghanistan-Pakistan border region in hues of gold and amber, but Sergeant Logan Brooks took little notice of the spectacular view. Brooks' focus was directed toward the Belgian Malinois beside him, observing the dog's sharp gaze as it scanned the area before them. Flint's ears were erect, his strong physique tense and prepared, as Brooks verified the specialized tactical vest indicating the canine as a working military canine. "All set, boy," Brooks murmured, getting a slight head tilt in reply. His experience in special operations, specifically K9 handling, had shown him that Flint's signals were frequently more dependable than the sophisticated gear the other team members used. The morning mist enveloped the valley below, partially hiding the rough terrain and reducing visibility to under 100 yards in certain areas. This provided excellent concealment for their advance, yet also gave any potential enemies a similar advantage for observation. Brooks made a final adjustment to his tactical gear before moving to where the rest of the task force was assembled near a rock formation. Lieutenant Rivera was in the middle of the group, his finger following a route on a satellite map laid out on a flat rock. "Intel suggests the weapons cache is located within this compound," he stated, pointing to a collection of buildings situated against the mountainside a mile ahead. "Satellite imagery indicates limited activity, however, we anticipate at least 4, potentially 6 tangos securing the location." The Joint Task Force, a dedicated unit comprising military personnel and police officers with tactical expertise, affirmed their agreement with a shared resolve. They had been monitoring this weapons smuggling operation for several months, following the movement of illicit arms across borders to insurgent groups. "Brooks, you and Flint take point," Rivera continued, looking up at the K9 handler. "We need to know if anyone's watching the approach. This valley's too perfect for an ambush." Brooks nodded, feeling Flint press against his leg, already anticipating the command. The dog's training was impeccable, but there was something more to Flint, an almost supernatural awareness that had saved their lives more than once. Officer Jenkins, the team's youngest member at just 23 years old, checked his weapon with visible nervousness. His gaze repeatedly shifted towards Flint, a blend of curiosity and doubt in his expression. This was his initial deployment with a K9 unit, and Brooks had heard him express reservations about relying on a dog's sense of smell for the mission during the briefing back at base. "We move in 10, Rivera announced, glancing at his watch. "Radio silence once we enter the valley. Standard sweep formation. Maintain vigilance over your assigned areas." While the team finalized preparations, Officer Carter approached Brooks, a rare smile spreading across his weathered face, as he bent down to allow Flint to sniff his hand. "Good to have you two in position," he said softly. "You saved my life in Kandahar. I've never doubted a dog since." The mists enveloped them as they advanced, their boots making a gentle crunching sound on the stony ground. Brooks and Flint held their location, the handler observing their environment as the dog moved with the effortless agility of a predator, nose working constantly. Following them, Lieutenant Rivera tracked their arrangement with accuracy, while Officer Perez, their EOD specialist, assessed the ground with the careful gaze of someone who deeply understood how things could explode. Around 3/4 of the journey to their goal had been completed by the team when Flint's behavior altered. Initially, the change was minor, a slight rigidity in his walk, his tail moving from a relaxed posture to a tense, watchful one. Brooks observed this promptly, his hand rising to signal the team to stop. Years of working together had made him sensitive to even the smallest changes in his dog's actions. The Belgian Malinois advanced 3 more measured steps, then halted suddenly, his posture locking in place, his ears rotating forward, then back, analyzing for sounds undetectable to humans. Brooks observed carefully, attempting to understand the unusual behavior. This wasn't Flint's warning for explosives, nor his response to people. This was something else, something Brooks had never witnessed. The remainder of the team proceeded a few paces onward before noticing Brooks and Flint had halted. Lieutenant Rivera pivoted, his countenance changing from concentrated resolve to annoyance. "Brooks," he indicated through tactical hand signals, What was the reason for the pause? Brooks gestured towards Flint, then used the hand signal signifying an unidentified detection. The dog remained motionless, his focus now directed at the ground ahead, his muscles rigid as if poised to recoil at any instant. Rivera advanced cautiously, positioning himself next to Brooks. "What is it?" he murmured, his voice low. "I don't know," Brooks responded, equally quiet. "This isn't a typical alert." Rivera glanced at his watch, then consulted the map. "We're falling behind." He continued, "It could be wildlife or it might be nothing. We have to proceed." Brooks hesitated, shaking his head. "There's something amiss." "I've never observed him responding in this manner." The lieutenant's expression grew strained, the tension between the mission objectives and Brooks's apprehension evident on his face. He finally allowed 2 minutes. "Examine it, then we proceed." Brooks nodded, releasing Flint's tactical lead to permit him greater liberty to investigate. "Search," he instructed quietly using the hand signal that paired with the spoken command. Rather than advancing as anticipated, Flint retreated a step, then turned to the left, his nose working diligently. The dog's behavior became more anxious, not with the enthusiasm seen during a positive detection, but with what Brooks interpreted as stress. Flint returned to Brooks, briefly leaning against his leg, then moved forward again, carefully positioning each paw as if examining the ground. "He's attempting to communicate something about the terrain," Brooks said, understanding emerging. "I believe we need to." "Time's up," Rivera interrupted, indicating the team should continue moving. "There's a mission clock to monitor." "Sir," Brooks emphasized, keeping his voice low but urgent, "Flint doesn't generate false alarms. If he's responding to something, we need to determine what it is before we proceed." Jenkins shifted his weight impatiently. "With all due respect, Sergeant, perhaps he's simply detecting old animal trails or something. Dogs can be distracted." The look Brooks gave the rookie could have frozen water. Not this dog, not in this manner. Perez, having been discreetly watching Flint's actions, moved ahead. "Let the dog work," LT something felt amiss. Rivera paused, conflicted between the established schedule and the increasing certainty that his lead operative and canine unit had identified something important. He allowed 2 more minutes, displaying 2 fingers to highlight his decision. "Make it count, Brooks." Brooks acknowledged, focusing entirely on Flint. The Belgian Malinois had returned to his starting position, standing stiffly with his head lowered, eyes focused on a point roughly 3 feet in front of him. The dog's posture clearly indicated a threat, causing a shiver to run down Brooks' spine. "Easy, boy," he said quietly, moving cautiously to kneel beside his partner. "Show me." Flint whimpered gently, a sound so unusual that Carter and Perez looked at each other with worry. The dog retreated slightly, then scraped a paw on the earth close to its front paws, keeping its gaze fixed on the area directly in front. Brooks examined the surroundings carefully, searching for anything out of place. The earth seemed normal, rocky soil with a few scattered plants, much like the landscape they had traversed for the last 30 minutes. There was nothing obviously different, nothing that could account for Flint's unusual actions. "I see nothing," Brooks stated, a hint of frustration in his voice. He trusted Flint completely, but whatever the dog was indicating remained beyond human sight. Perez advanced cautiously, his experience as an explosive ordnance disposal technician providing him with a distinct viewpoint regarding what could be causing the dog's reaction. "May I?" he inquired, indicating the area holding Flint's focus. Brooks nodded, placing a comforting hand on Flint's shoulder as Perez approached with deliberate steps, his gaze systematically scanning the ground. "Hold up," Perez stated abruptly, dropping to one knee. He leaned forward, peering closely at something difficult to see within the soil. With meticulous care, he removed a fine layer of dust from what appeared to be a metallic object reflecting the morning sun. The team paused, watching Perez's work, his movements slow and precise. Following a tense minute, he straightened up, his expression serious. "We have an issue," he stated softly, indicating what he had unearthed. A partially buried, circular metal object roughly 6 inches in diameter. A Soviet-era PMN-2 anti-personnel mine, likely present since the 1980s. The news impacted the team as if it were a physical force. Jenkins's face lost color while Carter briefly closed his eyes, seemingly in prayer. Rivera moved nearer, making sure to precisely match Perez's footsteps. "You're certain?" the lieutenant inquired, although Perez's knowledge of explosive ordnance allowed for little uncertainty. "Positive," Perez affirmed. This was a classic pressure plate design, a truly dangerous device, containing sufficient explosives to cause severe injury and engineered to inflict maximum harm through its fragmentation pattern. He indicated faint markings on the exposed section. It was of Russian manufacture, likely originating from the millions distributed throughout this region during the Soviet occupation. Brooks experienced a feeling of dread as the significance became apparent. "If there's one," he started. "There's never just one," Perez concluded somberly. These were positioned in arrangements, groupings, and rows intended to provide maximum area coverage with minimal exertion. The team became quiet, the severity of their circumstances becoming apparent. Jenkins interrupted the silence, his voice strained with suppressed anxiety. "So, what you're saying is we're located within a minefield," Carter said directly. "One that isn't shown on any of our intelligence maps." Rivera unfurled the topographical map, examining it with increased urgency. "No markings show a minefield in this region. This valley was expected to be safe. It has been utilized by local shepherds for years. Last year's monsoon season," Perez proposed, while assessing the surrounding landscape with fresh perspective. "Intense rains causing flooding in the upper valley might have revealed previously buried ordnance or altered the soil sufficiently to uncover what time had concealed." Brooks looked at Flint, a wave of realization flooding his mind. "That's what you were trying to tell me, wasn't it, boy?" he asked. "You detected the explosives even though they were buried." He gently touched the dog's head, feeling a blend of pride and relief. Flint had identified the danger much sooner than any person could have. "How did satellite imaging fail to detect this?" Jenkins questioned, his previous doubts about the dog now replaced by astonished gratitude. According to Perez, older mines such as these are primarily constructed from plastic with very few metal parts, intentionally designed to evade detection. Routine imaging would not identify them unless one precisely knew what to search for, and even then only under perfect conditions. Rivera's face had shifted from annoyance to serious worry. "Brooks, how much distance have we covered since we entered the valley floor?" he inquired, keeping his voice steady despite the situation. Brooks rapidly assessed the distance, approximately 500 meters from the entry point, and confirmed we proceeded single file through the constricted area. "Correct?" Brooks affirmed, the realization deeply unsettling. They had unknowingly ventured a considerable distance into the minefield before Flint provided a warning. Each footfall carried the risk of an explosion. Sheer chance had seemingly protected them, allowing their feet to navigate safely between the hidden pressure plates concealed under seemingly harmless dust and rocks. "So we are encircled," Carter observed. The veteran remained calm, a striking quality considering the gravity of the potential death sentence those 3 words implied. "Christ," Jenkins murmured, averting his gaze and looking at the ground with a sudden sense of fear. "Nobody move," Rivera stated, his ingrained training surfacing. "Perez? Any options?" The explosives expert assessed their location, his thoughts rapidly calculating possibilities. "First priority is to understand the scope of the area and pinpoint a secure escape route. Second is to establish the pattern. These weren't simply dispersed haphazardly. How do we proceed without, triggering one?" Jenkins asked, his attempt at maintaining a calm voice faltering. All eyes turned to Brooks and Flint, the unspoken expectation clear. The specialized detection skills that had previously prevented them from unknowingly venturing further into danger would now be essential for their escape. "Flint can identify the mines," Brooks confirmed, meeting their gazes steadily. "But this isn't the kind of assessment he specifically prepared for. We must proceed cautiously, carefully observing his responses to each possible action." Rivera affirmed, the decision finalized. "Brooks, your K-9 has indicated a target. Perez, you collaborate with them regarding identification and marking a safe route. The remainder of the team will remain motionless until we have a validated path." Rivera attempted to contact headquarters via radio, but received only static. Communications are offline, he stated gravely. We are either experiencing a localized radio blackout, or someone is deliberately blocking our transmissions. Perfect, muttered Jenkins, feeling trapped in a minefield with no backup arriving. Before we start moving, Brooks stated we need clear communication protocols. Hand signals only unless absolutely necessary to speak. He retrieved a small canister of bright orange surveyor's spray paint. I'll mark each safe footfall with this. 1 footprint, 1 mark. Step only on the orange marks following my exact path. Brooks focused on Flint using the specific tone the dog recognized as a working command. Flint, search. The Belgian Malinois reacted instantly, his behavior changing to working mode. He started systematically examining the ground directly around Brooks, moving in a close pattern. As he neared the spot where Perez had located the mine, he retreated, indicating his alert. However, he also continued checking other areas, proceeding cautiously forward and then returning to Brooks. Brooks explained, observing the emerging pattern, as he was establishing a safe zone designation areas he was willing to enter versus those he avoided. As Flint worked, the team began to see a potential path developing, a narrow, winding route that zigzagged back toward the valley entrance. Each safe spot was scarcely large enough for one person to stand, demanding precise foot placement and complete focus. This is going to be slow going, Rivera noted, checking his watch. Daylight was diminishing rapidly. Better slow than dead, Carter said, his tone serious. The team commenced their careful removal process, with Flint verifying every move, Brooks following behind and indicating the route with orange spray paint, and the rest of the team proceeding one after another, only stepping where marked. The route they took wound between mine locations, and at times the secure passage constricted to little more than shoulder width. 90 minutes elapsed during their extraction, and they had only advanced 50 meters. The sun had risen higher, its heat growing stronger despite the mountain air. Sweat trickled down Brooks' back as he concentrated on interpreting Flint's signals, the ongoing focus taking a toll. Rivera made a vital decision to move Jenkins forward in the formation, positioning him directly behind Brooks and Flint, where the more experienced operators could monitor him more closely. Brooks indicated to Jenkins, focusing on his boots. Step exactly where I step, precisely on the marks. 2 hours after their position change, with approximately 75 meters left to the projected safety point, Flint abruptly halted. His demeanor changed. It wasn't the usual alert for explosives, but something more pressing. The dog looked directly at Jenkins, a soft whine rising in his throat. Brooks, understanding the warning, immediately signaled them to stop. He carefully turned to check on Jenkins and observed what Flint had detected. The new recruit was experiencing severe panic, his breathing shallow and rapid, his eyes unfocused, and his body visibly trembling. Breathe, Brooks indicated, making eye contact with Jenkins. Slow and deep, the recruit attempted to follow instructions, but the escalating physiological response to panic was too advanced. His hyperventilation intensified, leading to dizziness that further disrupted his already fragile stability. The subsequent events transpired with a dreadful slowness. Jenkins, struggling against the dizziness brought on by the lack of oxygen, adjusted his weight a little to regain his balance. This movement was minimal, only a few inches to his right, but it caused his foot to leave the designated secure spot. A clear metallic click resonated in the unexpected stillness, sounding like a gunshot. All present stopped moving. Jenkins stared down in complete horror at his right boot, which was now positioned on a pressure plate detonator. The mine had been activated. Only the continued pressure of his weight kept the firing pin from releasing and triggering the explosion. Don't move, Perez signaled urgently. Though the command was entirely unnecessary, Jenkins stood perfectly still, terror having achieved what discipline could not. Tears began to stream down the rookie's face as the reality of his situation became clear. His lips formed silent words. "Oh God! Oh God! Oh God!" Rivera indicated to the rest of the team. No hasty actions. Brooks now turned completely toward Jenkins, proceeding with utmost caution. The new recruit's eyes locked with his, filled with panic and the grim awareness of the consequence of his error. Following the established EOD procedure for a detonated pressure mine, there were no favorable choices, especially in the field without specific tools. "I am sorry," Jenkins finally murmured, his distressed voice shattering the quiet. "I am so sorry. We're going to figure this out," Brooks replied calmly, although his mind raced through scenarios, each more desperate than the last. The accepted understanding was brutally simple. Once a pressure plate was depressed, any reduction in weight would trigger detonation. Jenkins couldn't move, couldn't be moved, and couldn't be saved by any established procedure. "I don't want to die," Jenkins sobbed, his composure now completely shattered. "Please, I don't want to die here." Brooks made a decision that went against every protocol and procedure. "I'm coming to you," he told Jenkins quietly. "Stay absolutely still." He instructed Flint to hold position, then began carefully moving sideways from their established path, placing his feet with precision developed from years operating in hostile environments. Brooks deviated from the established route, forging a new path. He wagered his knowledge of the mine placement pattern would allow him to reach Jenkins' location safely. "Brooks, negative." Rivera issued a direct signal. "Return to the secure route immediately." Brooks disregarded the command, his concentration unwavering as he narrowed the gap to Jenkins. The rookie's gaze was fixed on him, his face showing a conflict of hope and fear. "What are you doing?" Jenkins spoke, tears still running down his face. "You'll die too." Not intending to, Brooks responded with a composure he didn't completely possess. He approached Jenkins and carefully placed himself next to the rookie, their shoulders nearly touching. "Now, I require you to concentrate. Are you able to do that for me?" Jenkins nodded unevenly, trying to get his breathing under control. The rookie's complexion was pale, his eyes displaying the awful understanding of his circumstances. "Perez," Brooks called softly, "I need your assessment. PMN-2 specifications, pressure requirements, detonation timing." The EOD specialist performed a series of careful calculations, his expertise clear in the methodical way he analyzed the visible portion of the mine beneath Jenkins's boot. Standard PMN-2 requires between 8 to 12 pounds of consistent pressure to prevent the firing pin from releasing, Perez explained, his voice steady despite the seriousness of the situation. Upon activation, any substantial decrease in pressure will result in detonation. The triggering process is mechanical, not electronic, meaning there's no timer or delay. The action and reaction are immediate. Rivera remained in place, his expression resolute. "Options?" he inquired directly. Perez subtly shook his head. "Standard explosive ordnance disposal procedure for activated pressure plates in the current environment lacking specialized tools is..." He paused, looking towards Jenkins. "Say it," Jenkins murmured, his voice strained. "Evacuation of all personnel to minimum safe distance, followed by controlled detonation," Perez concluded, the routine protocol seeming like a final judgment when voiced. "So I'm dead?" Jenkins asked quietly, new tears forming in his eyes. "There's no escape. There's always a way," Brooks insisted confidently. "We simply haven't discovered it yet." From his location on the designated trail, Flint whimpered quietly, his focus on Jenkins and the pressure plate under his foot. The dog's ears were alert, his body rigid but contained, observing the circumstances with a focus that Brooks understood from their most difficult detection exercises. "What about a weight shift?" Carter proposed from his position. "Substitute his boot with a matching weight at the same time?" Perez thought this was theoretically possible, but practically it would be incredibly difficult to perform with the required precision. The timing involved was measured in milliseconds between the removal and replacement of weight, with the need for exact pressure matching. Brooks observed Flint's sudden movement as he left his hold position to cautiously approach Jenkins. The dog's actions were intentional and purposeful, reminiscent of the behavior Brooks had witnessed only during their most intricate detection tasks. "Flint, hold," Brooks said gently, unsure of his partner's intentions. This was the second time that day the Belgian Malinois disregarded a direct command, proceeding with his cautious approach until he arrived at Jenkins' location. With meticulous care, Flint moved around the rookie, examining the pressure plate from various perspectives, his nose working constantly. "What's he doing?" Rivera questioned, observing the dog's atypical behavior. According to Brooks, Problem-solving involved recognizing a pattern, which sparked a glimmer of hope as he's seen this before during complex detection scenarios. He was analyzing variables. Much to everyone's astonishment, Flint descended to the ground and carefully extended his muzzle toward Jenkins' boot, sniffing delicately around the edges where it met the pressure plate. Perez observed, with growing amazement, as he measured the pressure distribution, carefully assessing how the weight was balanced across the mechanism. Flint finished his inspection and then looked directly at Brooks. Their years of partnership enabled communication that went beyond words or typical signals. The dog's intent was clear. He had a solution. "I believe Flint has an idea," Brooks told Jenkins, placing a steadying hand on the rookie's shoulder, "and I'm inclined to trust him." "A dog has an idea?" Jenkins inquired, his voice filled with desperation and hope. "How is that possible?" Brooks responded, observing Flint initiate a methodical search, exhibiting the precise movements they had seen during the mine detection exercises. Following several minutes of intense observation, he neared a small collection of rocks approximately 10 feet distant, scrutinizing them with remarkable concentration before choosing a specific stone with his teeth. Flint resumed his position at Jenkins, the rock held carefully but securely in his mouth. It was approximately the size of a baseball, possessing a fairly flat surface on one side. The dog looked straight at Brooks, obviously anticipating help. "I believe he's attempting to fashion a weight substitute," Brooks stated, understanding emerging. The stone was intended for the boot, designed to maintain pressure on the plate. Perez's eyes widened. That's indeed a workable solution. Should the stone possess a weight distribution comparable to Jenkins' foot and be positioned with enough accuracy, it might sustain suitable pressure on the firing pin. But how do we perform the substitution without causing detonation? Carter inquired. The timing would need to be flawless. A heavy atmosphere of apprehension filled the space as they readied themselves for the precarious procedure that would decide whether Jenkins lived or died. Brooks positioned himself beside the new recruit, mindful of his own stability on the uneven ground and ready to help with the shift in weight. "On my count, we'll start," Perez instructed, his voice exhibiting the composed confidence of someone who had defused explosives in dangerous situations. The procedure must be ongoing but incremental. Avoid abrupt actions, avoid pauses. Flint stood close, still holding the chosen rock in his mouth. The Belgian Malinois focus was unwavering, his disciplined stillness masking the intelligence evident in his amber eyes. "Flint, ready," Brooks commanded quietly. The dog advanced with a precision that would have impressed a surgeon, carefully positioning himself directly in front of Jenkins' trapped foot. "The firing pin mechanism is located approximately here," Perez stated, pointing to a spot just behind the center of Jenkins' boot. "That's our critical pressure point. Maintaining a consistent force during the transition was crucial." Brooks nodded, then turned to Flint. "Place it," he instructed. With meticulous care, Flint lowered his head and positioned the stone beside Jenkins' boot, ensuring the flat side faced the pressure plate. The dog's placement was remarkably accurate. The stone was situated exactly where Perez had specified the firing pin mechanism would be. "Perfect," Perez exhaled, observing with amazement. "Absolutely perfect positioning." "Now comes the tricky part," Brooks told Jenkins. "I'm going to stabilize your leg while Flint and Perez manage the weight transition. Your job is to remain absolutely still until instructed, then lift your foot with extreme care when the signal comes. Understand?" Jenkins nodded, his face set with determination despite the fear that was still evident in his eyes. "I understand." What followed was perhaps the most remarkable display of canine intelligence and control any of them had ever witnessed. Jenkins slowly lessened the load from his toes, and Flint meticulously altered the force on the stone with a precision that appeared beyond an animal's capability. The dog predicted each tiny decrease, reacting immediately to keep a steady pressure on the essential trigger point. 90% transferred, Perez stated, his usual composure fading to show real astonishment. "The stone is now supporting nearly all the weight." "Final phase," Brooks affirmed. "Jenkins, on my mark. Extend your foot straight back. Execute a smooth, controlled movement. Flint will keep the pressure on the stone." Jenkins inhaled deeply, concentrating entirely on the impending motion. 3, 2, 1, begin, Brooks counted down. With painstaking slowness, Jenkins started sliding his foot backward, keeping contact with the ground as he gradually lifted from the pressure plate. Flint applied increasing pressure on the stone, his strong neck and jaw muscles functioning with accuracy to uphold the precise force necessary to avert detonation. Time appeared to elongate, seconds becoming an endless span as the final extraction took place. Silence permeated the air. The entire world contracted to this singular focus. A man's boot shifted backward, millimeter by millimeter, while a dog held the danger at bay with only the strength of his jaws and the intelligence in his amber eyes. After a time that felt like hours, but was likely only 30 seconds, Jenkins's foot finally moved completely off the pressure plate. The stone stayed in place, Flint keeping constant pressure with unwavering concentration. Clear, Perez announced, his voice quiet. Foot is free of the pressure plate. The stone continues to hold the trigger suppression. In an action that astonished even Perez, the Belgian Malinois initiated a deliberate retreat. Initially, he made a slight adjustment to the stone's position, confirming its precise balance on the pressure plate. Subsequently, he lessened jaw pressure gradually, while concurrently using his muzzle to exert downward force, assessing the stone's stability. He was assessing whether the stone would stay in position without assistance. Perez stated aloud. That exceeded any training. That represented genuine problem-solving. Upon his complete withdrawal, the stone remained perfectly balanced on the pressure plate, maintaining the essential pressure that secured the firing pin. Stone is stable, Perez confirmed, his voice revealing disbelief even though he had seen it happen. The mine is contained. Jenkins stood in the safe place he had marked, tears streaming down his face. Not from fear anymore, but from overwhelming relief and gratitude. How do I? He stammered, unable to find the right words for the moment. You'll thank him later, Rivera said, his earlier skepticism replaced by undisguised amazement. For now, let's keep mining while we're lucky. Continuing their deliberate advance, Flint abruptly changed direction, guiding them toward a lateral valley extending from their present location. Subsequent examination revealed disrupted ground, suggesting recent human presence. Footprints displayed a loaded weight distribution, indicative of individuals transporting substantial items. Rivera deduced these are the weapon smugglers. They're employing the side valley as a transit route. They are aware of the minefield. They're utilizing it as a deterrent. Following Flint's lead along the smuggler's path, their progress through the minefield was quicker, though the dog occasionally alerted to newer Chinese-made mines that have been recently placed. They are actively mining the alternative approaches, Perez noted, creating a single safe path that only they know. When they finally reached safety, beyond the minefield perimeter, Jenkins looked at Flint with unconcealed admiration. I never would have believed it if I hadn't seen it myself. He saved all our lives today. That's what these dogs do, Carter replied simply. They detect what we can't hear, what we can't smell, what we can't see, and sometimes that makes all the difference between returning home or not. 3 days later, the valley had become a major military operation as specialized EOD teams methodically cleared the minefield. A total of 27 weapons crates were found, more than 300 mines were located, and information connecting 3 distinct terrorist organizations to the smuggling route was gathered. Jenkins, who had previously questioned the value of canine assistance, asked for a continuous assignment to the Canine Support Unit. Brooks anticipated this. The new recruit had grasped the fundamental principle of canine operations. Rely on your dog, Brooks stated succinctly, particularly when, and most importantly, you are uncertain about what they are indicating. Have you ever observed an animal identify a hazard that humans failed to notice? Service animals, such as Flint, have remarkable senses that enable them to recognize dangers well before we can perceive them. Would you place your life in the hands of a canine like Flint during a critical situation? This story showcases the remarkable capabilities of military working dogs, but canine units globally routinely achieve feats of detection and intelligence that appear almost supernatural to first-time observers. If this incredible story of canine heroism impressed you, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary canine tales. Click the bell icon to turn on notifications so you never miss our daily uploads. Please share this video with friends and family who enjoy remarkable stories about working dogs and the handlers who trust them with their lives. Don't miss our previous canine stories appearing on screen now. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, for another brand new video. The cadaver dog abruptly halted at the foot of the ravine, unwilling to proceed. "Storm, what is it?" Officer Klaus Kinski inquired, but the dog remained stationary. Shortly thereafter, they arrived at a clearing, and Storm's discovery left every individual stunned. A ranger's deceased body chained to a tree, the victim of murder, but that wasn't the most unsettling aspect. It was Storm's subsequent action that defied explanation. So what transpired in that forest? Please subscribe and leave a comment indicating your viewing location. Let's begin. The fluorescent lights of the county sheriff's department hummed quietly as Officer Klaus Kinski packed his gear at 5:15 a.m. The early morning silence was punctuated only by the steady breathing of Storm, his German Shepherd partner, who sat at perfect attention nearby, his dark, intelligent eyes fixed on his handler's movements. "Ready for another day, buddy?" Klaus asked, gently scratching behind Storm's ears. The dog's tail thumped against the floor once, a quiet expression of his enthusiasm. Unlike other K9s who might bark or prance, Storm had always been remarkably composed, almost dignified in his responses. At 5 years old, the German Shepherd had already earned near legendary status within the department. His ability to detect remains was remarkable, often locating them in cases where other dogs and advanced technology had been unsuccessful. 3 months prior, he had found the body of a missing hiker beneath a landslide that had significantly altered the terrain. Just 2 weeks earlier, he had followed the scent of human remains through a flash-flooded canyon, guiding recovery teams to a body that would have otherwise been lost to the sea. A strong bond formed between Klaus and Storm when they were partnered 18 months ago, yet Klaus occasionally sensed a certain enigmatic quality in his partner, levels of intelligence and awareness surpassing even the most expertly trained police dogs he'd worked with before. Klaus's phone vibrated with a message from Sheriff Dawson. "My office now, possible missing person." "Let's go, Storm," Klaus instructed gently, attaching the lead to Storm's working harness. The dog moved with a smooth, controlled grace alongside him through the station's hushed hallways. Sheriff Dawson glanced up from his desk as they entered, his face etched with concern. "Forest ranger missing. Jacob Ramsey, 42, a seasoned outdoorsman, failed to report in after his patrol 3 days ago. His truck was discovered left at the Thunder Ridge trailhead." "Any leads?" Klaus inquired, taking the file folder that Dawson offered. "Nothing definite," Dawson replied. "Rangers have conducted initial searches, but the area is extensive. They required Storm," Klaus acknowledged, reviewing Ramsey's file. A respected conservationist with 15 years of experience with the Forest Service, specializing in wildlife protection. Dawson added a further detail. Ramsey had experienced conflicts with poachers in the north section and had submitted reports concerning several individuals, including Tony Tips. He was a dangerous person with a criminal record. Klaus observed Storm, who appeared calm, but seemed subtly more vigilant upon hearing about the missing ranger. A peculiar coincidence occurred when Storm was assigned to Klaus approximately 18 months prior, via a contact within the Forest Service. The transfer documentation was ambiguous, stating only that Storm's previous handler had, with some hesitation, released him to the K9 program due to his remarkable abilities being unsuitable for a personal companion role. Forest Service headquarters experienced a period of heightened activity when Klaus arrived 30 minutes subsequently. Storm emerged from the truck, instantly using his nose to assess the mountain air. Rangers gathered around maps displayed on a folding table sheltered by a canopy, their expressions etched with concern. After 3 days of absence, they were now searching for either a fortunate survivor or a deceased individual. Officer Kinski, a tall woman dressed in a ranger uniform, stepped forward. "I'm Chief Ranger Marissa Ling. Thank you for attending," she said. Klaus responded. "What was the most recent verified sighting of Ranger Ramsey?" On Tuesday morning, while beginning a routine patrol of the Thunder Basin area, Ling responded, indicating a northeastern portion of the map. His focus was on investigating reports of illegal trapping. They located his truck at this position, although the trails diverged in 5 directions. Storm remained focused as Klaus presented Ramsey's uniform shirt for him to analyze, his nostrils widening as he registered the missing ranger's scent. Klaus was struck by Storm's immediate intensity, not only in his professional focus, but also by a deeper, almost personal determination. He seems particularly driven today, Ling noted. Dark clouds gathered against the mountain peaks as 2 ranger guides led Klaus and Storm to the trailhead where Ramsey's truck had been found. Recent rainstorms had turned sections of the trail to mud, potentially washing away scents and evidence. Klaus released Storm's tracking lead, instructing him to search. Find him, Storm. The German Shepherd commenced his systematic grid pattern, utilizing his sense of smell. 20 minutes elapsed during the search when Storm abruptly raised his head, analyzing the air, then turned sharply eastward, departing from the designated search area. He possessed something, Klaus called to the rangers, hurrying to keep pace as Storm pulled them deeper into a dense section of forest, down a seldom-traveled ravine where sunlight barely penetrated the canopy. The forest grew denser as they descended, centuries-old trees forming a cathedral-like canopy that muted even the birds' calls. Storm moved with increasing urgency, his methodical search pattern transforming into determined pursuit. Klaus struggled to keep pace, observing that the terrain grew steeper and more treacherous, a route no one would choose willingly. He's tracking like he's on a mission, one of the rangers commented, breathing heavily while navigating down a particularly steep section. I've worked with search dogs before but have never seen this level of focus. Klaus nodded, keeping his eyes on Storm's tail as it disappeared around a massive fallen tree. He usually works in a precise grid pattern. This was different. He seemed to know precisely his destination. The temperature decreased significantly as they went further down into the ravine, the air thick with the smell of moist soil and rotting plants. Storm stopped sometimes at intersections, sniffing the air before proceeding with resolute confidence. Suddenly, Storm's behavior altered considerably. The shepherd stopped, his hair standing on end, a quiet moan rising from his throat. Over 5 years of partnership, Klaus had never witnessed such a reaction from his typically composed partner. Storm? Klaus approached with caution, worried by this unusual behavior. The dog trembled slightly, then advanced more slowly, guiding them toward a small clearing. When they pushed through the undergrowth, Klaus saw it, a massive oak tree standing alone in the center of the space, and chained to its trunk, the unmistakable form of a human body. We've got a body, Klaus radioed, his heart sinking as he neared, locating the scene approximately half a mile east of Search Grid C. The victim, wearing Forest Service khakis, was slumped against the tree trunk, arms pulled behind and secured with chains wrapped multiple times around the tree. Multiple stab wounds marked the chest and abdomen. Blood had collected and dried in the dirt below. Death had not been swift or painless. What followed shocked those present. Despite usually exhibiting impeccable composure at death scenes, Storm deviated from established procedure. The shepherd approached the body, whimpering a sound Klaus had never heard from him before, and began gently nuzzling the ranger's limp hand. "Storm, back!" Klaus commanded, shocked by this breach of training. For the first time in their partnership, Storm disregarded a direct order. He stayed near the body, his demeanor shifting from that of a trained canine to something different, deeply saddened, appearing almost human in his distress. As the recovery team began to move the body, Klaus observed his partner with increasing worry, a thought taking shape. Storm wasn't exhibiting the behavior of a cadaver dog that had successfully found a target. He was acting as if he's discovered a companion. A technician carefully examined the victim's pockets, recovering a wallet. Jacob Ramsey of the Forest Service confirmed his identity, displaying his ID card. The photograph depicted a man in his early 40s, possessing gentle eyes, a tanned and weathered face, and a well-kept beard. When Klaus saw the photo clearly, his heart skipped a beat. A wave of recognition struck him with considerable force. "Can't be," he murmured, looking from the ID photo to Storm. Klaus then knelt beside Storm, presenting the ID card so the dog could see it. Storm responded instantly, a quiet whine escaping him. His nose softly touched the photo protected by plastic. Storm had been transferred to our K-9 unit from a contact within the Forest Service, who was no longer able to keep him despite their connection. Klaus provided the explanation, and everything clicked. The documentation stated his previous handler relinquished him because his detection skills were too remarkable to be used for personal companionship. He needed to be deployed in service. A realization spread among those present. Klaus confirmed that Ramsey was Storm's original handler, and the dog's unusual behavior now seemed understandable. He relinquished Ramsey so Storm could work with the sheriff's department. Standing alone with Storm beside Ramsey's body, Klaus whispered, "I'm sorry, buddy. I'm so sorry." The shepherd leaned against him, seeking comfort in a way he never had before. "We'll find who did this," Klaus promised, both to Storm and to the man who had loved him enough to let him go. "I swear it." While the medical examiner made arrangements to transport Ramsey's body, Klaus allowed Storm the necessary space and time. The shepherd continued his mournful vigil, sometimes touching the ranger's hand. The experienced officers and medical staff worked silently, moved by the dog's clear sorrow. Suddenly, Storm's head jerked up, his nose working rapidly. His distressed appearance disappeared, giving way to the concentrated focus Klaus knew from their tracking assignments. The change was sudden, so thorough that those nearby observed it. "What's happening?" one of the rangers asked. "He's found something," Klaus responded, observing as Storm circled the tree where Ramsey had been chained. "He's scenting." Unexpectedly, Storm fixated on a scent trail and sped toward the northern edge of the clearing, almost wrenching the lead from Klaus's grip. "He's tracking someone," Klaus exclaimed, exerting himself to keep up as Storm raced through the underbrush. "Could this be our killer's trail?" They advanced further into the forest, Storm assisting them up a steep incline, through a thick area of mountain laurel, and across a small stream. Despite the difficult ground and the time passed since the murder, Storm showed no hesitation, never losing the scent. The trail led them to a small valley where a creek ran through the landscape. The dog's pace finally lessened as they neared a small clearing positioned against a rock face. Evidence of recent human presence was immediately visible: a makeshift campsite with a fire's remains, discarded food wrappers, and trampled grass indicating where someone had slept. Storm examined the campsite carefully, then paused, becoming very still and alert. He remained motionless near the fire pit's remains, observing an area where several larger stones created a rough circle around the ashes. "He has something," Klaus said softly, approaching cautiously to prevent damage to any potential evidence. Storm remained motionless, signaling that he had discovered something important. Klaus approached the fire pit and carefully inspected the area Storm had indicated. Initially, he observed nothing out of the ordinary, simply stones, ash, and dirt. However, upon closer inspection of the stone arrangement, he detected a subtle discoloration in the soil near a notably large rock. Concealed beneath it, and partially embedded in the loose earth, was a hunting knife featuring a unique carved handle. Even in the muted forest light, dark stains were visible on the blade. "He found the murder weapon," Klaus said with quiet amazement. Looking at Storm with newfound respect, through rain and days of weather, he tracked the killer's trail and led us right to the key evidence. Storm remained in his alert position, not moving a muscle even as additional officers began arriving at the scene. His composure was remarkable, particularly given the emotional weight of the search. Although he clearly had ties to Ramsey, and despite experiencing prior sorrow, he had consistently adhered to strict evidence preservation protocols. "I've never encountered anything comparable," confessed Hartman, as the forensics team meticulously excavated and processed the knife. "Typically, human suspects falter under emotional strain. Your dog transformed it into focus for the investigation." Klaus nodded, observing as the knife was carefully placed in an evidence bag. The technician's initial assessment corroborated the apparent evidence. Blood was present in the handle's grooves and on the blade, aligning with the injuries sustained by Ramsey. "We need to send this to the lab for DNA verification," the lead technician stated. "I'd wager my pension this is your murder weapon." Hartman inquired, "Any fingerprints?" "Possible partial prints on the handle," the technician responded. "If we're fortunate, whoever committed this act was inattentive." Returning to the sheriff's department, a sense of intense concentration permeated the atmosphere as forensics examined the evidence Storm had located. Klaus remained at his desk, studying Ramsey's case file, while Storm rested at his feet, the shepherd's gaze seldom leaving his handler's face. Despite still exhibiting signs of the day's occurrences, Storm had transitioned to a watchful composure, seemingly anticipating the next step in their assignment. Klaus's phone sounded, Detective Hartman calling from the lab. The print analysis came back positive. Tony Tips, with a history of poaching convictions, assault charges, and criminal trespass, is identified. He's been a person of interest for Ramsey for several months. Tips, Klaus stated, reviewing the documentation to locate the name. Ramsey had previously submitted 3 reports concerning Tips within the last year, each documenting illegal trapping within protected areas. That establishes our probable cause, Hartman affirmed. Revenge. Additionally, forensic testing confirmed the blood found on the knife is consistent with Ramsey's blood type. We possess sufficient evidence to obtain an arrest warrant. Surveillance images of Tony Tips depicted a man in his mid-30s, characterized by a shaggy beard, intense eyes, and a weathered complexion indicative of a difficult life. Security footage indicated his truck was traveling towards Thunder Basin on the morning Ramsey disappeared, and then departing that night. This timeline aligned precisely with the murder. As twilight cast the mountains in amber light, the tactical team established positions around Tips's secluded cabin. Klaus and Storm waited concealed behind a group of pine trees. 50 yards from the back door, the shepherd's body language displayed controlled tension, remaining perfectly still except for his eyes following the movements of the officers surrounding the property. The SWAT team moved with practiced efficiency, converging on the cabin from multiple angles. Sheriff's Department, search warrant, echoed across the clearing as they breached the front door. Almost immediately, a crash sounded from the rear of the cabin, followed by a shout over the radio. A suspect was fleeing out the back window, east side. Prior to the commander being able to issue new orders, a figure burst through the back door. Tony Tips, holding a backpack, and running directly toward the dense forest behind his property. Klaus made a split-second decision, unclipping Storm's lead and giving the command they trained for countless times. Storm, apprehend. The shepherd launched forward like a missile, covering the ground between them and the fleeing suspect with breathtaking speed. Tips heard the approaching dog and glanced back, his face showing terror as he saw 80 pounds of focused German shepherd closing the distance. Stop! Police! Klaus shouted, running behind Storm with his weapon drawn. Tips ignored the command, increasing his efforts to reach the tree line, but he was unable to escape. Storm closed the final distance with a powerful leap, striking Tips between the shoulder blades and sending him crashing face-first into the dirt. Tony Tips, you're under arrest for the murder of Forest Ranger Jacob Ramsey, Klaus announced formally, reciting the Miranda rights as Tips was helped to his feet. I didn't kill nobody, Tips retorted, though his eyes moved around anxiously. Don't know what you're talking about. However, his demeanor shifted when he saw Storm, a brief moment of recognition followed by evident apprehension. That's Ramsey's dog, he mumbled almost to himself. What the hell? The interrogation room at the sheriff's department was intentionally plain. It featured bare walls, a metal table fixed to the floor, and uncomfortable chairs. Tips sat hunched on one side, his hands cuffed, as Detective Hartman presented the evidence against him. Klaus cautiously guided Storm to the department's dedicated K-9 area, a protected room with soft bedding, water, and recognizable toys. Stay, Storm, I will return shortly, he said, engaging the door's safety latch. During the observation, Klaus witnessed Hartman's confrontation with Tips. Hartman presented the evidence. The knife discovered at the campsite bearing Tips' fingerprints and blood matching Ramsey's type, alongside camera footage of his truck near the scene. It wasn't supposed to go like that, Tips eventually confessed, leaning forward. I just wanted to scare him, teach him a lesson about messing with my traps. While Tips recounted the altercation, describing how he'd surprised Ramsey on the trail and how the situation escalated, a disturbance arose from within the building. A K-9 unit was reported loose over the radio, having escaped from the secure area. Storm appeared around the corner, moving purposefully and disregarding the officers trying to contain him. In a departure from their usual dynamic, Storm bypassed Klaus entirely, his attention solely fixed on the interrogation room door. The shepherd slammed against the door, managing to force it open despite its solid build. Tips and Hartman looked up, startled, as 80 pounds of intense energy flooded the room. The subsequent events appeared to play out in slow motion. Storm swiftly moved across the area with alarming accuracy, overturning the table completely, his objective clear. Tips scarcely had time to lift his hands before the shepherd connected with his face, sending both of them tumbling to the floor. "Get him off! Get him off!" Tips yelled as Storm's jaws latched onto his cheek and forehead, the attack appearing targeted and deliberate. Klaus and Hartman both reacted instantly, seizing Storm and attempting to pull him away. "Storm, release! Release now!" Klaus ordered, using all the authority in his voice. For several tense seconds, Storm held on, then finally obeyed Klaus's repeated commands, loosening his grip and stepping back, his muzzle smeared with blood. "He tried to attack me." Screams echoed through the pain. "That dog, Storm, tried to attack me." Storm was immediately placed in mandatory isolation while Tips received medical treatment for his injuries. The reality of their situation was serious. Police K-9s who attacked without command faced a standardized response, often euthanasia, regardless of circumstances. "Tips is getting 20 stitches, Sheriff Dawson informed Klaus grimly. "He's already threatening legal action, demanding Storm be put down immediately." "He broke the case," Klaus stated, desperation evident in his voice. "Found the body, tracked the evidence, located the murder weapon, and then attacked a handcuffed suspect in custody." Dawson concluded firmly. "The evidence collection is now potentially compromised." By 9 a.m. the following morning, the department's conference room had been converted into a makeshift hearing chamber. A long table at the front seated Chief Jenkins from County, Sheriff Dawson, and the department's legal counsel. Various officers, Forest Service personnel, and administrative staff were seated in rows to observe the proceedings. Storm was brought in by a neutral handler, adhering to department protocol for K-9s under review, and secured to a fixed point at the room's side. Despite the circumstances, he remained perfectly composed, exhibiting a professional demeanor, a sharp contrast to yesterday's violence. As Klaus entered, Storm's focus instantly shifted to him, yet he held the precise stance he had been instructed to maintain. "This disciplinary hearing is now in session," Chief Jenkins declared, his voice reflecting 30 years of experience in law enforcement. "We are here to examine the incident involving K-9 Officer Storm and decide on suitable measures in line with department procedures." Klaus had spent a sleepless night preparing his statement, collecting Storm service records, and contacting K-9 training specialists who could potentially assist their case. He had known Storm for only 18 months of the dog's 5-year career, but during that time, they had become inseparable partners whose combined skills had resolved dozens of cases. Detective Hartman detailed the events in the interrogation room, and then the department veterinarian reported having examined Storm and finding no physical distress or illness that could account for the behavior. While other officers testified to Storm's excellent history, a department officer entered and presented Sheriff Dawson with a document. "Chief Jenkins," Dawson announced, "we've just received pertinent information. Tony Tips has provided a full confession regarding the murder of Jacob Ramsey." This morning, Dawson informed the surprised board that Tips requested to speak with detectives without his attorney. He relinquished his rights and provided a detailed confession, including evidence of premeditation. Tips stated that seeing Storm prompted his confession. Jenkins, reviewing the statement, commented, "That dog knew. Somehow it knew exactly what I did to Ramsey." Following almost an hour of testimonies, which included an unexpected video statement from Storm's original trainer, the board adjourned to deliberate. 20 minutes passed before they reconvened with their decision. After examining the evidence and the circumstances, Jenkins stated, "This board has decided that although K-9 Officer Storm's actions broke procedure, the unique qualities of this case require leniency. Storm will be placed on probationary status for 3 months, during which he will undergo intensive retraining. Officer Kinski will also complete advanced handler certification focused on emotional management in working K9s. Relief flooded through Klaus as the verdict was announced. Following the probationary period, Storm would be reevaluated for return to full duty. The board acknowledged both the severity of the protocol violation and the extraordinary circumstances surrounding it. Jenkins stated that the decision recognized the seriousness of the protocol violation and the unusual circumstances involved. The board also acknowledged Storm's outstanding service record and the specific situation arising from his relationship with the victim. As the crowd started to leave, Ranger Chief Ling spoke to Klaus. "Jacob would be proud," she said softly. He relinquished Storm because he was convinced the dog's capabilities could save lives and deliver justice to victims. Today confirmed his belief. "I wish I'd known him," Klaus said, observing the neutral handler readying Storm for his return. Storm embodies his training and his impact in all that he does. Link expressed sadness as Jacob transferred Storm to the K9 program. He described it as relinquishing a part of himself, yet acknowledged that certain partnerships hold such significance they must be shared for a wider benefit. As the hearing ended, Klaus detached Storm from the anchor, allowing him to stand openly beside him again. The shepherd's demeanor remained impeccable, but a nuance in his stance hinted at comprehension, possibly even contentment with the result. "Ready to return, partner?" Klaus inquired gently. Storm raised his gaze, his knowing eyes conveying a message deeper than simple words, more than just loyalty or relief, but a profound connection forged by their shared experience. Justice had been achieved for both Jacob Ramsey and Storm. Tony Tips had confessed and would face the consequences of his actions. Klaus, meanwhile, had gained a deeper appreciation for the remarkable bond between handlers and their K9 partners, a connection that sometimes transcended human understanding, bridging not just species, but time and loss as well. Have you ever witnessed an animal demonstrate extraordinary loyalty to someone from their past? The enduring relationship between Storm and his previous handler serves as a powerful illustration of how animal bonds can persist despite separation, revealing an emotional complexity often undervalued. Do you believe your pet possesses the capacity to assess character, even if their responses appear dramatic? Considering the circumstances, would a disciplinary committee have offered Storm another opportunity following his attack on the murderer? The distinction between instinct and justice can be unclear when we examine the impressive capabilities of these highly trained K9 officers. If Storm's story resonated with you, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary K9 tales. Tap the notification bell to ensure you don't miss our new uploads. Share this video with friends and family who appreciate the remarkable bond between handlers and their K9 partners. Don't miss our other K9 tarot stories currently displaying. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, with another brand new video.